name is Bear Siragusa, and you are listening to the Hunting Hound podcast presented by W Hunting Supply. All right, I'm here with Paul Wilson. Thanks for coming, Paul.
Thanks for inviting me, Bear.
Oh, I've been wanting to talk to you for a while. We connected over a question I had about the Penn Meredale foxhounds,
Right,
a while back.
yes.
And it wasn't until after we'd talked that I realized I've actually heard a podcast with you before. I could never find it again, but I know I've heard a podcast with you from before.
Yeah, it was. I think I did, and it was a good long while back. Actually, back when I was living up in Canada with Ronnie Beam and the Hunting Dog podcast.
Oh, sure. Okay, that's exactly what it was. I've been frustrated, ripping my hair out trying to figure out which podcast that was. That's
and
cool.
that has to be. That's got to be. I mean, I've been here in Virginia nearly 7 years now, so it's got to be probably 8 or 9 years ago now, probably. Good
Sure.
while back. Good while back.
That's a while ago. Yeah. Interesting. Well, that's cool. But I guess let's start from the beginning. We're getting ahead of ourselves here. Tell us a little bit about yourself, your origins, and kind of the chronicles that brought you to where you are now.
Okay. All right. Well, I don't know if I can fit it all in an hour, but
we don't have a time limit here.
Your listeners might get a little bit bored. So I'm originally from the northeast of England, a little town called South Shields, which is just slightly south of Newcastle, right on the not far from the beach. And I grew up with working with terriers and lurchers and whippets, of which I still all have all of those things now. My grandmother's brother was a very famous, what we call a kennel huntsman to the Puckeridge foxhounds down in the southeast of England. And he was there until his late 80s, early 90s. He was still riding. He wasn't working for them anymore, but he'd served for consecutive masters for nearly, I think it was something like 60 seasons, 55 seasons, something like that.
Okay.
A long, long time. And I remember going down as a kid, going down to their place on vacation and chatting with my Uncle Ned. And I was just completely fascinated and hooked by the hounds. And in England, we feed the hounds on fallen stock in England. So if you're in a dairy area or, cattle farming area, if you have a cow that's unfit for human consumption or it's died, the hunt kennels would go out and pick it up. They'd have a pickup. We'd go pick it up, winch it up, bring it back to the kennels, and we'd butcher it for the hounds. And that's exclusively what we fed the hounds. So it fascinated me as a kid going to see Great Uncle Ned and, butchering animals and stuff like that. And as a young kid, I wasn't grossed out by it. I was more intrigued than I was grossed out by it. And I think that probably sealed the deal. So I carried on my teenagers and I carried on hunting. I always had the terriers. I was I used to work with ferrets. And that's not really a thing. It's not really a thing, I don't think, in North America, but that was a huge part of my childhood. We could, had a lot of ground there that had rabbits they live in holes in England, right? They're not like the rabbits here. The rabbits here tend to live in like brush piles and just live above ground primarily, whereas back home in England, they have these huge big warrens.
Right.
So the premise is you drop the ferret in and you put little what they call purse nets over all of the holes, or long nets is another way of doing it. And the rabbits smell the ferret and hightail it out of there and run into the nets, and you catch them, or you have a lurcher or a whippet sitting on the outside and the dog catches it.
Sure.
So that was my thing as a kid. I used to do a bunch of that. But fast forward I leave school, I go to college for a while, realize that's just not working for me. And grown up around, my grandfather had paid for riding lessons for me as a kid. So we'd always kind of had a interaction with horses and whatnot.
Hmm.
So I went off and I was working for some show jumpers for a couple of months, and then eventually honed in, working at a hunt kennels, down
Okay.
in the southwest of England, and kind of just basically ran the ladder of succession. You start off in the kennels and in the stables doing all the grunt work, and then
Sure.
eventually.
Which pack was that?
So I started off with the East Devon down in the southwest of England, and then from the East Devon, I went to a pack of what they call West Country Harriers, which
Yep.
I don't know if very many people are familiar with the West Country Harrier. It's They still hunt. They hunt hare and fox with West Country Harriers. They're slightly different to a stud book harrier in as much as they're pretty much exclusively white. A lot
Okay.
of
Interesting.
people think of a harrier as your traditional, like an English foxhound, like the tricolor.
Sure.
Whereas West Country Harriers they're all predominantly white. You'll see them with some kind of lemon markings and whatnot, but primarily they're a light colored hound.
Cool.
So
Wow.
that was
Interesting.
my first ever whipper in job, which is basically the huntsman's assistant's job.
Hmm.
And they basically help the day-to-day running, and then on a hunting day, we basically are like scouts for the huntsman. So that we'll get out and watch for good game coming out and watch for bad game and make sure the hounds aren't hunting.
Yep. Yeah, I lost you there for a second. Make
Sorry.
sure the hounds aren't hunting.
Yeah, make sure that the hounds are hunting the correct game, really, to be honest, the correct
Right.
quarry. So so that was my first whipper ins job, under a real old taskmaster of a guy called Paul Tidwell, his nickname was Sparky because it didn't take much for him to spark off, and that was from his own
Okay.
his own stepson called him that. His own stepson was did the same job. And I guess I would never recommend that, like whipping into your own stepfather. I guess that must have been tough for him.
That must be adding kind of insult to injury.
Yeah, just a little bit, just a little bit. So yeah, so I did spend a couple of years there, and then from the southwest, I went up to the Lake District to the Vale of Loon Harriers, which actually do hunt hares. They're your typical stud book harrier, the tricolors.
Hmm.
That was right against the British, the English Lake District. It's beautiful, beautiful country. A lot of
Yeah.
just rolling hills, stone walls, and I stayed there a couple of seasons, and I enjoyed that a lot. That was a lot of fun. But I missed hunting foxes, hunting hares. The jackrabbits. It is fun. It is fun, but it's just there's just something about hunting a fox that's different to hunting a hare, and I missed that.
Completely
I
agree.
missed that.
I totally agree.
So then I went to the northernmost pack of foxhounds in the UK, which was the Fife foxhound, and whipped into a really good guy there, who was also a bit of a taskmaster, but a very, very, his knowledge was fantastic. A guy called Mark Drage, and he consequently came out here. When I left in 2000, he left also and came to a pack of foxhounds down in Georgia called the Midland Foxhounds, which are quite a famous pack.
Oh, cool.
But learned an awful lot from him. So he went to Georgia, and I went to Ireland. Then I whipped in Ireland to the County Kildare Foxhounds, and then from there,
Okay.
we went out to Italy to my first huntsman's job, and I was the huntsman at the Rome Foxhounds, which was quite the experience. That was some crazy countryside out there, and beautiful countryside as well, and great food.
Oh yeah.
So yeah,
Absolutely. That's so cool. So you were, I mean, were they hunting foxhounds in the were they hunting foxes in Italy in the same
Absolutely.
way that you were
Yeah.
accustomed? Was it
Yeah.
was it a traditional, so to speak?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
So the Rome foxhound started by a guy called Lord Chesterfield. Everyone's heard of the sofas, Chesterfield sofas. So that was this guy, Lord Chesterfield. His wife was diagnosed with tuberculosis, and back in the day, the cure for tuberculosis was to go to hotter climates. So
Warmer climates, sure.
so he moved to Rome. And him and his wife were trotting along the road one day, which is where the kennels were, the Via Appia Antica. And so he saw a fox go in front of him. And he was a master back in England. I don't recall which pack it was. But basically, he sent for a huntsman, a pack of hounds, and the whole 9 yards, and moved the whole thing out there. So
that's really cool.
He established the fox hunt out there, and I don't recall the dates, but it was so 1880s, 1890s sort of time. And then his wife got well pretty quickly, actually, in the Mediterranean climate. I think he was out there maybe 2 years, maybe 3, and then a guy, and it was all very. And still, when we left there in 2004, there was still a lot of aristocracy that hunted. It was very exclusive. And so when Lord Chesterfield went back to England, he handed the reins over to a guy called Prince Odescalchi. And he was master there for forever. And they always seemed to have English staff. They always had English or Irish staff come over. So the hounds were always talked to in English. And the countryside, it was beautiful countryside. Very, very pretty countryside. And they had a ton of foxes too. Ton of foxes.
I can imagine. I can imagine. Was heat, I mean, I'm a little bit curious about that, just both where you are now and also now that you mentioned Italy. Was heat an issue for you guys? Were you, when you were there?
So my predecessor there was a bit of an oddbod, but he kind of, in fairness to him, he wasn't afraid to dabble and kind of try new things. And he tried various different crosses, rather than just straight English foxhounds, which had always traditionally been there. And I had two particular two crosses that I really, really, really thought an awful lot of. One cross was the Anglo-Français. He brought some of those in. There was a local bow hunter that had used some of it. So he got some Anglo-Français from him. And he also got, so they were bloodhounds, but they weren't bloodhounds. These were very much more like, not like the AKC type you'd see. They weren't pure bloodhound. They had a little bit of a French breed called Bruno de Jura. I don't know if you've ever heard.
Sure. Yeah,
Bruno
absolutely. Yeah, the ancestors of the bloodhounds, I believe,
basically. So there is still a strain called Bruno de Jura in France now. So this particular bitch had, I think she was like 3/4 bloodhound, 1/4 Bruno de Jura. And my predecessor had bred her to an English foxhound, and there was 3 bitches in the litter. And my initial thoughts when I came there, they were unentered at the time. They'd never hunted. And I thought, these things are just going to be just boo, just honky old things that just would, they couldn't they couldn't get out of their own way kind of thing. Boy, was I ever wrong. Those things were absolute flying machines. Absolute flying.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. That's
had a real high pitched squall. It wasn't, I was expecting this big old ball mouth on them. No, they had a real shrill, high,
the foghorn.
just like these had a real high pitched squally voice, but man, they could catch foxes. They were dynamite. And then the other cross, like I say, was the Anglo-Français, and they were dynamite too. So in regards to the heat, I really don't think it bothered them. I think then, as I do now, I think a lot of it is consistency of weather patterns. So if you don't have rain for a long time, I think they're able to adapt to that, and they're able to concentrate better and get their heads down and work. Is it harder? Yeah, for sure. But I think it's all relative. I think any hound guy that's ever been through a period of time where where the ground has been so warm and it's been dry. And then suddenly you get rain and you think, oh, great. Yeah, they're going to scream tomorrow because we've suddenly got moisture on the ground. I always
Right.
find it just screws them up. It messes.
Yeah,
It just messes them up.
absolutely.
You think that it's going to just
Absolutely.
suddenly, improve the setting conditions tenfold. Yeah. In my experience, and that's nearly 30 years of foxhounds, I've yet to see that. I think consistency of weather patterns is what's important. If it's consistently wet, then that's good. And if it's consistently dry, it's not good, but it's as long as it's consistent, they're able to deal with it and cope with it.
Right. Right. That makes total sense to me. It's, I've talked to a bunch of a bunch of the guys from like kind of wetter places, like Georgia, Louisiana, places like that, where they do get quite a bit of rain, that try to go out and do the same thing in desert conditions, and they really struggle. But I've also heard the flip side of guys who have thought that, I'm going to really improve my pack and their scenting ability by bringing in a dry ground lion dog
Yes.
to, Maine. And that's going to, make all the difference in the world, and have found out that actually it takes a little bit of time for that
To
dog
adjust.
to adjust.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's, they're able to take up the scent particles. And when certainly I think like something like a dry ground lion dog is used to dealing with such fine particles of scent with probably minimal intrusions. Like you're talking big, massive areas where critters aren't really walking over an awful lot compared to the East
Right.
Coast, where we've got 40,000 million creatures running all over the place. We've got, everything from armadillos, coons, rabbits, everything under the sun, deer. I think if you brought
Right.
a dry ground hound into that circumstances, its olfactory system's just going to go, just what the hell?
Absolutely. It's, it's a matter of interference.
I think so. I've always firmly believed that.
Or contamination.
Yeah, exactly. 100%. I think we're getting the hound to get its head down and dial in and get dialed into whatever quarry it's on. I think the weather conditions obviously do play a part, but I think when there's a disruption in the weather patterns, it takes them a while. It takes them a day or two just to get their head straight and get them focusing on what they're supposed to be focusing on.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that sounds reasonable to me. So from Rome, where did you end up?
So I went from Rome. So I had a friend who was at the pack where I am actually at now. He's an Irish guy. Had said to me, "You've got to get yourself over here." He said, "This is where it's at. North America is where you need to be." And my wife was pregnant with our first son, my first and only son. And the accommodations in Rome just weren't suited to a family. They were, it was okay as a couple, but just not with a child as well. Just the accommodations weren't suitable. So we'd heard that there was a job coming up in Pennsylvania, Western Pennsylvania. So I applied for that.
Mm-hmm.
The guy promised the earth, the moon, and the stars, and the whole 9 yards. We came across. It didn't really work out that well. The guy was a bit of a jackass, so we parted companies after a year, and I then went to Hamilton, Ontario, up in Canada.
Okay.
And that was primarily hunting coyotes. A lot of coyotes out there, but in a fairly restricted, tight territory. We had a lot of fun there, and then 2 years after that, I kind of got headhunted by the next door pack, which was the London foxhounds, which is further southwest. So we're talking about an hour and change northeast of Detroit. And
Okay.
they basically headhunted me, offered me more money, much bigger kennel, hunting a lot more days. And the registered country was huge, huge, huge ground. And I stayed there for 12 years. I mean, we had so much fun there. I mean, some monumental coyote chases. I mean, I think one springs to mind, like my penultimate day there. One of my bosses who had been a master with that particular pack for over 45 years said it was the best day they'd ever
Mm-hmm.
had. And we'd found a coyote just over the road from where the kennels were. We had about, I think it was about 17 couple of hounds, so about 30, 38 hounds out. They found him
Yep.
within about 10 minutes. They ran him straight to the village of Ilderton, which is about 6.5 miles straight north. And then he turned just short of the village and then crossed quite a major road. And at that point, there was just me on my horse and two guys in trucks. And the one guy basically shut the highway down so the hounds could get across the road. And then basically this coyote just legged it straight back on the opposite side of the highway, straight back from whence he came, the other 6.5, 7 miles back down. And the hounds caught him.
Wow.
Hounds caught him in a field away from a Walmart parking lot. So just goes to show you how everything's getting built up nowadays. I don't even know if we could do that run now. That was, what was that? That was 7-8 years ago now. And my son had a visit back up there last year, and he said, "Dad," he said, "all of that's built up now." So it's scary in just 8 years. How much it's,
yeah.
And I think that's something as hunters, it doesn't matter whether we're hunting, rabbits, bears, foxes, whatever. I think it's something that is a big issue for us all. Really, is the loss of habitat for us to be able to hunt and do it safely. I mean, I think the electronics we have now have made it hugely. I mean, I don't think if we didn't have the GPS collars we have now, I think it would be almost unattainable. Like, I mean, we have so much development and so many vehicles.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, yeah, I totally agree. You don't have the luxury anymore. And I mean, it sounds funny saying it's a luxury. I mean, those guys that did it before the collars were,
they're a different breed.
Incredibly. Oh, different breed. Absolutely. But, in a modern sense, we don't have the luxury anymore of kind of taking, a couple of days to find our hounds.
No, they're going to.
We need to know where they are at all times, which is, luckily we've got the technology to do that, but it's a little bit of a burden too, I think.
It is. And as much as I love the Garmin system, it's horribly unreliable. I mean, I'm running, this time of year, I'm training pups and whatnot. And, there's days where I'm taking 40 hounds out training. And,
yeah,
I've got 40 collars on. And, it's a constant, you constantly have to shell out, it's oh, this collar's not working now. This collar's not working. And not to bag on Garmin, but their after sales is just awful, horrible. I mean, you think how many thousands of dollars we spend constantly upgrading stuff and whatnot, and they just don't give a crap. They're just like, oh, well, yeah, get in line, take a ticket, good luck. They just don't seem to give a damn, which is frustrating. It is extremely frustrating. Even most of
it is a little bit frustrating.
Well, most of the, I mean, so much so that I've actually, I have a friend that took over from me up in Canada that's running the Pathfinder 2, the Doctor Pathfinder.
Yeah,
and he says that he's had collars. I mean, he ran the Pathfinder. He's not on the Pathfinder 2, but I mean, he's had collars that are 7-8 years old, and he's using them, several hours a day, 3 days a week, and he said they're still working perfectly. And I've had Garmin collars that have crapped out at, always convenient yet, like 13 months once the warranty's out on them, kind of thing,
Right.
So
yeah, no, we've got a couple of different collars over here. We've got the Garmin, then I've got the same issue that you're talking about, that they crap out after a certain amount of time, and the customer service isn't that great. I had a dog get away from me, and I was only picking him up sporadically every 5 or 6 hours. And I called Garmin and asked them if they could remotely turn down the update rate on the collar to conserve battery because it was cold. And the dude, like full blown, like derisive laughter in my face.
Yeah.
But I had another collar on that dog that was a tracker collar. It's called the company's called Tracker, which is kind of similar to the
Dogtra.
The Dogtra collars. And I called him, and he was like, "Oh yeah, we could definitely do that." And they were able to turn the update frequency down to something like once every 10 hours if I wanted that.
Wow.
You know? So it would have lasted for weeks. But it's just like, it's a different attitude. Garmin, sort of surprisingly, not to go off on a tangent about Garmin, but it's like, surprisingly, Garmin still has this attitude of like, well, who else?
Yes.
They think they've still got the monopoly, and I think that they're going to wake up one day and realize that.
Well, like I say, I just ordered 5 collars with the Dogtra, and I'm going to run it simultaneously with the other one and see how we go and give it the trial that, and if I feel that it is, then through attrition, I'll just slowly just burn out the Garmins and go to the Pathfinder. I mean, I'm not committed. I'm not a fanboy of Garmin. Like, I mean, if it turns out that Dogtra has a better product, then like I say, we'll eventually through attrition just switch over to them, because, I have to have things that are working and robust. And, as hound guys, we all know the places our hounds go to, like the collars have to be robust and be able to take a knock and a bang. And, they say to you, oh, well, it's that code that runs from the battery to the GPS signal. Well, make it.
Then
yeah, fix it. Exactly. You know exactly why it's doing it. Why the hell haven't you fixed it?
Right.
It's infuriating. I mean, you're charging nearly $400 for a collar now.
Right.
Like, and that's a constant worry for me. If I have a hound missing, that's like a hound running around with a $400 bill around its neck. It's like, you lose too many of them. Right. That's a chunk of change.
Right. Yeah. No, exactly. It's
So yeah. So we kind of got off on a tangent there anyway, but yeah. So
we did a little bit. All right. You were in the foxhounds. I want to ask you a real quick question before we go on. Were you hunting the coyotes in sort of a traditional foxhound way, off of horses and things like that? What are some of the differences? Because and I'm interested in your answer to this, because the pup that I just picked up is out of a coyote, an American foxhound that's a coyote hound from Nebraska. Right. And I'm a little bit curious to see what your opinion is in terms of hunting both types of game. What are the similarities? What are the differences?
I think the main thing I find with hunting coyotes is you got to think a lot bigger. I mean, a fox is going to make a turn whenever it can, unless you're getting in and around sort of the January time when you've got dog foxes running around looking for girlfriends. Generally, your foxes have got somewhat of a territory. A coyote has a massive, massive territory, and if you get one buzzed, I mean, if you get up on his jacksie and start buzzing him, he's running. He's running hard, and I think if hounds check up on a coyote, more often than not, you need to push them forward as opposed to checking to the left or to the right kind of thing. Because the good chance is he's probably not gone left or right. He's probably gone straight on.
Right.
In some ways, I find coyote hunting you could almost say is easier because they're slightly more predictable.
Really? Okay.
I think they are. I think, especially if you get in one's head. If you buzz a coyote within about 30 minutes and you've got a really, really good pack of hounds, he's going to end up a dead coyote. But they're also can be very smart. I mean, I've sat and watched them up in Ontario. They had some huge, big coyote pens there that we train the pups in. And I remember getting up in one of the high towers there, and a coyote making an absolute fool of a bunch of hounds just creeping through some. It was farm. It was a pen, but it was farmland. And I remember like vividly seeing this coyote just literally doing like 50 50-yard circles and loops and figures of eights. And the coyotes, the hounds were right in behind him, just following away, just doing their thing. And the coyote was just making an absolute fool of them. He knew that there was just no scent, right? So they can be incredibly smart, but at the same time, if you get in the heads, they can be incredibly dumb as well.
Right.
But I think that's my main thing. I think foxes generally are a lot cooler and a lot more. They think a lot more when they're running, I think.
Okay. Does it require a different kind of athleticism to run a coyote than it does a fox?
I think they need good confirmation either way. I think you need good confirmation, and that goes for it. It doesn't matter. Form follows function. I mean, if you've got a hound that's put together a spare parts, yeah, sure, it's going to do it, because a good hound is always going to work in spite of its shortcomings. But I think if a hound is made right and is made correctly, he's going to last a whole pile longer than a one that's put together with spare parts. I don't like too heavy a hound. I mean, a lot of the English hounds, it'd be too much for my liking. There's nothing more pleasing than seeing a really attractive English foxhound. But for me, I just find, especially for North American hunting, a lot of the time they get too big, they're too heavy. The heat just kills them. It just sucks it out of them. I'd rather have a lighter framed, which, there's a reason why the American foxhound was developed. They're a lighter boned hound. Right. They're just better suited for fox hunting. And even when I was in England, I preferred that lighter framed hound. I don't particularly like a big, clunky, heavy hound. That's not to say I haven't had some nice, big, heavy set hounds. But personally, I prefer a little bit more of a racier type of hound. I mean, I know you're going through this project right now with your little hound that's from this wolf proofing kind of side of things, which I think if I had that kind of situation going on, maybe I'd be thinking more along the lines of you,
Yeah, that's always been my attitude when I've gone into, any kind of the working dog world that I've been in, any aspect of it that I've been in, with the Huskies, there are dogs there are a lot of different type of Huskies, and those things are going to translate into different strengths and weaknesses depending on the conditions that you're in and the terrain that you're in. And, I believe the same thing about the hounds, in that, what's a good hound in Virginia may not be a good hound in Ontario, may not be a good hound in Rome, may not be a good hound in, I find that a lot of the time it's dependent on both the terrain, the conditions, also how you like to hunt,
100%.
what you're looking for.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
And, that's what I'm interested with this pup, is that she is, my issue with the Nordic breeds of hound, I won't say a bad word about them. But the reality is that after the fox population here collapsed in 1980,
right,
completely collapsed. We got a mange epidemic, and it killed 90%. Literally, that's an actual number. 90% of the fox population. Just completely destroyed them. And the people who had hounds do what houndsmen tend to do, and they adjusted. Yeah. They went and trained their hounds to hunt other game. Right. And what you ended up getting was a very, very strong. The hounds became very, very strong on hair, right, which is excellent. I'm not taking anything away from those hounds. Being a good hair hound that requires a lot of the qualities that I look for.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
But yeah, it is a lot of fun. I mean, I've done it. It's great fun. I prefer hunting foxes, and the issue with the hair hounds is that they got they got kind of big.
Right.
And not in like a long-legged kind of way. They got kind of
Right.
clunky and thick-legged, and you know, some people really like that. The Dunker, you know, the Dunker Hound, for example, it's a beautiful hound. They end up being this kind of, you know, merle blue color. You know, breathtaking hounds, and watching a good one work is just a lot of
But
fun.
they got that little dumpy. I know exactly what you're saying. Yeah,
kind of big joints and clunky, and you know, and just not what I'm looking for. You know, and so I've tried a couple of different things. I've tried a Russian hound.
What?
Which is this big brown saddle-backed thing that was created outside of Moscow. A bunch of years ago, but they bred bloodhounds to Borzois.
Oh wow! Holy cow! That's quite a combination.
And created a dog. Yeah, I mean, and created a dog like you picture what that would look like. That's exactly
right.
What it would look
wow.
Like. Yeah. But they can be, a good one is really good, but a not good one, they're either really good or they're
right.
not.
Yeah, there's no in between.
There's no in between. Right. So, you know, I've had this. It took me a little bit of time to find what I was looking for, and the closest thing that I found to what I was looking for was an American foxhound, which is what I had. But she's got her own issues. She came to me late, and you know, she's got her things. But this pup from Sweden, from Eric Partolo in Sweden, I'm excited about, because he's done a little bit of the same thing that I did when I was a dog musher, which was breed to dogs that are performing at a high level, doing what he wants to be doing, and not only doing what he wants to be doing, but doing what he wants to be doing the way he wants to be doing it.
Yeah.
And so I'm excited about it. It's going to be interesting to see. She's a little firecracker, and I like that about her. But she's smart. She's I think probably the smartest hound I have here right now, which is a little bit scary considering that she's only 12 weeks old.
Well, I mean, I think, like we were talking about before, I think you have to have a type of hound that suits your personality as well. You know, I mean, it's like how we initially made contact about the Pen Meridel. Those Pen Meridel hounds will not take any kind of rough handling. They're very, very, they're quiet, timid, kind of quiet. If you were kind of brash and loud, you wouldn't. They wouldn't work for you. They'd shut down on you. You know. So I think you have to. Not only do you have to have a type of hound that fits your criterion as much as the quarry that you're going to hunt and the territory you're going to hunt, but also your own temperament as well.
Sure. It surprises me to hear that about the Pen Meridels. You would think that as an American race, they'd be used to brash and loud, since we're fairly brash and loud.
The way I look at it is, I think, you know, if you look at the registered packs of hounds, like the English hounds and even the American hounds to a lesser degree, but they've been in this regimented area of, you know, they've had kennels and they've, you know, they go through a regimen and the whole 9 yards. Whereas you look at the history of the Pen Meridels, they were basically, you know, a bunch of good old boys in Pennsylvania, Maryland, and Delaware that, you know, all got together and went up on the mountain, turned their hounds loose or on the eastern shore. And the rest of the time, they were probably tied to a barrel out the back of the yard. So, I mean, they probably never, ever had the type of interaction that something that, like, say, the English foxhound that's, you know, probably like 400 years of institutionalized kennel management. Do you know what I mean?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, bred for fitting into that culture. Yeah. I mean, you know, yeah, absolutely.
And I think that's, being an Englishman, I prefer the American Hounds. I think American Hounds they think for themselves. The English Hound for several hundred years has been hunted by guys that have a job to do, and they have members that are galloping behind that want to see. They want to be moving. They want to be constantly moving. They want to be galloping. They want to be jumping fences. And for years and years and years, England's fortunate that it has a tremendous fox population, has a lot of foxes. And they're some of the top packs, especially back in the day, were very, very, very organized. They'd have something called earth stoppers so that they'd know where all the big major earths were, and they'd go and put big sacks of straw in all the holes so that if the fox was starting to, he'd had enough and he was looking somewhere to go, all the earths were blocked, so he had to keep on running. So they got longer runs, right?
Sure.
So
sure. Yep.
You've had that for several hundred years. We've had that pressure of basically paying members that want to run, so that there's pressure on those huntsmen back in the day that they couldn't let their hounds hunt on their own, if you know what I mean. So if they were running a fox and suddenly things slowed down a little bit, they came to a tricky spot, they had the members breathing down their neck to say, come on, we got to get going, we got to get going, we got to get going. So then it would force the huntsman to pick the hounds up and try and cast the hounds to a direction where he thought the fox had gone, or if somebody else had seen the fox and hollered that the fox was there, they would pick the hounds up, not literally pick them up, but get their heads back up, gallop off, take them to where the fox had been seen. So they're incessantly being messed with all the time and not allowed to hunt for their own. So I think that is of a detriment to them. I think I would just describe it as too many years of overhandling, But then you go the flip side of something like a Pen Myrtle that's in the eastern shore of Maryland, or up in some, in the middle of some mountainside. You could never get to them. That's the whole point of that type of hound, is they have tremendous noses. They're incredibly independent and will just keep plugging away. But the drawback to that is they can be inclined to just dwell on a line and just boo, and they've gone 2 yards, and it's like they've lost that drive because there's no one there to kind of push them on and say, come on, no, you can't just sit there and sniff that one spot for 3 hours, or just chug along. Whereas, so you've got two ends of the scale that you want doing my job. I want them to, I want, the aim for me is for me to take a pack of hounds out and find a fox and run a fox and me not do a damn thing. That is the art of it. I bred them so well that if they make a loss, they're able to fix it themselves with minimal help from me. And that's a sign of a good huntsman. There's an old saying in England: foxes are killed in the kennels. Right? It's not literally we're killing foxes in the kennels. It's all the pre. It's your breeding, it's your regimen, it's how you exercise them, how you train them, how you've exposed them to everything.
Sure, absolutely. I mean, that's the English version of the your team is only as good as your bench.
Yeah, absolutely. You've got to do the pre-work, and then a good pack of hounds and a good huntsman make it look easy. I mean, it looks like we're not doing anything. If you have a good rapport with your hounds, and it's no different. Translates same with coonhounds, same with bear hounds. It's all the same. If you you get what you put in. You get out what you put in. And I think that's the key to having a good pack of hounds. You see some guys that do my job and they have egos the size of, just huge egos, and they're galloping around and, they're tooting on hunting horns and they're making a big show. And it's, to some people it might look impressive and they might think, oh yeah, he's a great huntsman. But I always think contrary to that. I mean, if I see a nice quiet huntsman that's making minimal fuss, minimal noise, the hounds are getting the job done. That to me is a good huntsman.
I I agree with you there. I don't know much about I don't know much about that form of hunting. I've never done it myself. I've read quite a bit
Right.
about it, but I've not actually experienced it myself. But you've sent me some videos, and I can go on YouTube and I can find videos, and you see these people, kind of running around, making a lot of noise, blowing horns, tally ho,
Yeah.
tally ho. But what's impressed me about your videos is I see the horse's ears, I hear its feet, and I hear the hounds. That's
occasionally
it.
I'll cheer them on, and occasionally I will blow the horn, but it's not
Sure,
about
but
me. It's about the jewel in the crown is the hounds, and I think for anybody listening to this, I mean, if you listen to this, you're a hound guy, like, and that to me is why I do this job. I love this job, is because it's all about the hounds, and that's their
right.
job, and that's I know I've done my job right if they're doing their job right.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, I think that's going to just be a great segue into, we've talked a little bit about coyote, fox, what makes a good hound. You made the jump from Canada to where you are now, correct?
Yes.
And you've been there for
Since
how long?
2017. So this going into my seventh year.
Okay.
So yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that and the position and the hounds.
So
And
I took over in 2017. Did some like the club did some huge renovations, redid all of the kennels. We've got a beautiful facility here now. Redid all of the staff's accommodations and a big the barn block, the stables for the horses. So they redid all of that. They had a big injection of cash. We had some wealthy members that kind of threw some money at it, and so they redid all of that. So I came down, like I say, 2017. It took them about 2 years to redo everything. But I had good. So this job here, I knew the guy that was that was the guy that had told me when I was out in Rome to come on over here, and he was getting out of it. So I knew a lot of the bloodlines that were here, and I knew how brilliant the hounds were. There were some really, really nice bloodlines here, and I'd used some of those lines up north in Canada.
Okay, what are some of those?
So predominantly, this pack is predominantly made up of Bywater's American strain, which is a strain that's from out of Culpeper County. Burrell Bywater, Frank Burrell Bywater was the original guy who started it off. And they're everyone's heard of Walker hounds, and there's bird songs and trigs and all of those kinds, but they all have their attributes and whatnot. But the thing I like about this particular strain is they're so biddable, super, super biddable. And once you tell them something, they kind of get it. I mean, some guys doing my job and some packs of hounds have horrible jobs trying to get them broke off a deer. They're constantly.
Right,
I mean,
right.
even when they've got the main pack, they all ride with a pistol on their saddle with rat shot in case anything starts messing around with deer and stuff. And I honestly, truly can say hand on heart, these ones, outside of what we call the cub hunting season, like the early season where we're training puppies I very, very rarely have any issues with them messing around with deer. Very rarely. I mean, they just seem to come out of the womb not wanting to chase deer, and if they do, some guys, like I say, they're shooting them a rat shot, or they've got shock collars on the highest setting, and they're frying them in left and right. And I honestly, truly don't have that issue with them. I mean, you can catch a hold of one and give one a little bit of a tap, but more often than not, if you get up alongside them and just say, no, they know straight away that you've disappointed them. They've disappointed you, and And it's funny how the kind of pack self-regulates. If one does kind of get a little bit of stray and messes up, I'll kind of verbally chastise them, but as it comes back into the pack, all the rest of the pack jump on him and will growl and grizzle and kind of, yeah, you screwed up, boy, you screwed up.
Oh,
yeah,
interesting.
they kind of the rest of the pack will rate that hound too because it's done something.
That's interesting.
So
that's interesting.
That's
cool.
one of the things I do like about this strain. They can be a little bit sulky, you know, in terms of if you do have to get a little bit, you know, short with one, they kind of, especially if they mess up collectively and you have to kind of have words with the whole lot of them. It can mess up the rest of the day because then they get really sulky and then they won't go off and draw, what I call draw, go find a fox. They'll kind of sulk behind you a little while. So they do. Yeah. So, I mean, I think that's one of the downsides to them. But for the most part, I think they're a really cool strain of American Hound. You know, they're very, like I say, biddable. Biddable would be the best description of them. Like they're easy to work with, you know, and respond very well. You know, they don't. Very rarely do you have to tell them multiple times to do things. You know, some hounds. I mean, especially some of the English hounds are just dumb as a box of rocks. I mean, their ferocity and drive. I mean, they have tremendous drive and tremendous, almost like a walker. You know, they just won't quit. They just won't give up. But those same hounds would run a deer, and you could hit them over the head with the 2-for-4 10 times, and they'd just stand and go, "Duh, what?" You know, and they'd go back and just go back to chasing the deer again. You know, and you know, back hunting in the 21st century, we can't do that. You know. We cannot do that. I mean, you know, I mean, I know you're living in Finland, but I mean, here in especially on the East Coast, and thankfully we don't have that big an issue with it up here. But you get out into South Carolina and Georgia, where all these guys have these deer leases. You know, it's tricky enough as it is. But if you've got hounds ripping around, literally physically chasing deer, I mean, you know, it's not going to happen. Like, you're going to end up with your ass in a sling.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. No, I mean, it's the same, and it's the same here. You know, it's here in Norway, we've got this thing where it's you can't hunt deer with a dog that's over 16 inches.
Yeah, I think we had this discussion before. I think that's the most.
We did have
this is the most ridiculous rule ever. Absolutely.
It is the most ridiculous. I totally agree. It's right up there with you can't run. Even problem bears, you can't run problem bears here in Norway with hounds. You've got to run them with Spitz types like Norwegian elk hounds and Swedish
elk hounds. Is that like a
hounds.
protectionism kind of thing?
It's because they think the hounds stress the bear out.
What? That's bizarre. That is weird.
It's so bizarre. It's so bizarre. But anyway, you know, so our hounds, like our tall hounds, I've got a beagle that I hunt deer with.
Right.
We have a blast, you know. But my tall hounds, if another hunter sees them running deer, that guy he can shoot them, and he may have a leg to stand on.
Right.
And you know, like a legal leg to stand on, which is really, it's discouraging.
Well, I mean, I think we had this discussion before. I mean, we've all seen 16-inch beagles that can fly like the hammer and tongues of hell, and yet something that's 20 inches that's a little bit more medium paced, you can't use that, but you can use the fire and tongues of hell of the little beagle. Like, I mean, it just, that seems ridiculous. And the whole bear thing, I mean, what difference does it make if it's a little pointy-eared, hairy, yippy one as opposed to a droopy-eared one that's got a, you know, deep old bull voice? I mean, it just seems that's
exactly. I mean, especially if you're dealing with problem bears.
Yeah.
Like you're going to go and shoot that thing in its head.
I don't think it really cares what kind of dog's chasing it.
Right. It's like, well, I'm about to die, but at least I wasn't being chased by a hound. It's like,
Oh,
I
the
don't think,
shame! Oh,
it's
the
like,
shame!
it's the, right. The shame. I would actually be more embarrassed having hunted over some of these Norwegian elk hounds. I'd be more embarrassed to have my ass killed by a Norwegian
Oh,
elk
good
hound,
lord!
to be
Yeah,
perfectly
no, that
honest.
that does seem rather silly. That like, but you know,
It is a little bit, but I mean, I agree with you. My beagle is faster than either of my plots have ever
right?
been.
Yeah,
So if I ran deer with my plots, they'd be rolling at a slower miles per hour, kilometers per hour than when I
you
run
need
them
to
with
get
my
some of them
beagle.
trialing
And he
beagles from
is,
here. I remember watching them one time, and it took them about 25 minutes to cover 4 feet.
oh no, thank you. That's what do they call that? Dying gracefully on the line.
I don't. I'd never seen it. I mean,
It's
I think we had this discussion before as well. That was like, coming from England,
yeah.
I'd only ever seen beagles running hares, and they're gone. Like they're bloody flying machines. But then I came to North America, and somebody invited me. Oh, come down to the Beagle Club. We're gonna run some rabbits, and I'm like, all right, yeah, this could be fun. This will be interesting. And they ran a brace of or a couple of beagles on this one rabbit, and it was like, good lord, the rabbit's going to need one of those walking frames like by the time they've finished running it. I mean, it's just
It's gonna die of old
yeah,
age before they
holy
catch up to
cow!
him.
I'm like,
Yeah.
well, whatever. At least on the plus side, I mean, you could literally have a 5 acre pen, and I mean, you could have some tremendous noise. I mean, they you could just sit in the middle of it and listen to it all day long. I suppose on the plus side,
I guess, yeah, but it's when beagles have become fairly popular
right?
over here. But there's a reason that all of the beagle lines that are over here, to my knowledge, and I'm sure somebody's going to
Contradict you.
bro me
Yeah,
about this fact after once they listen to this. But to my knowledge, the lines of beagles that are here in Scandinavia are almost exclusively the
yeah, the
British
hair
beagles.
dogs from England. Yeah, yeah,
Exactly. Because we still are not allowed to hunt packs
right.
here. So we have to have dogs that are able to, individually by themselves get the
Yeah,
job done from start to finish by themselves. So it took some breeding to be able to get to that point, to breed them away from that pack
yeah.
mentality. But the beagles that are here now are actually I like them a lot more. The more I hunt over them,
Yeah,
the more I like them.
yeah. They're well. I
They're
mean,
interesting
it's like
little
you hit
animals.
the nail on the head there. I mean, you're looking for a more well-rounded animal all round. I mean, I'm hunting. Even when we're in the thick of our season in January and February, we're hunting approximately between 30 and 35 hounds. And
Right.
of those 35 hounds, I may have 5 that are particularly good running on asphalt. There may be another 3 or 4 that are particularly good at running on gravel roads. Some that are really good at particularly finding a fox. Some that are really good at marking a one that goes to ground. Some, they're because I often, you hear that all the time. Oh, why do you need 25 hounds to run it? Right. And it's not that we need 25 hounds. You can produce a hound like you just said, a well-rounded hound that can do it all. But we they're a team of specialists as opposed to one single jack of all trades.
Right. That makes total sense to me. So
Sorry, go on.
Go ahead.
Well, I think that's when you have a bunch of specialists, they're very much that, right? I think if you can afford, and like I work for a hunt club, right? So it's not finance is an issue, and this day and age, finance is an issue for everybody who have their own hounds. But I mean, if you can afford to keep specialists, I think that is definitely a better way of doing it. And secondly, I mean, it sounds. I mean, you've heard the videos. I mean, you get 30 hounds that are just in full cry. I mean, it just makes the hair on the back of your neck stand up. And you just don't get that same feeling from one hound.
No. I mean, and that's that's legit. I mean, that's the videos that you've sent me. I've replied of, something to the tune of, this is what heaven must look like, because it's like, it's bone chilling. It's like makes the hair on your neck stand up in a way that, hounds will always make that happen. But when you hear a big pack of foxhounds going at it, oh man, that's music.
I often think like that literally that music needs every type of voice. I think, like there's certain packs that they hear them and they're awful squeaky, and then you flip side of that coin, like a lot of those Penmerdell hounds, they have those real deep ball voices, and it sounds tremendous, don't get me wrong, but I like to hear, it's like a symphony. You want to hear a bit of everything. And I think I have a lot of those real big old ball mouths, but there's some high-pitched squally ones in there. There's some chopped mouths in there. There's just a mixture of everything. And that accumulatively just sounds amazing, especially when you get them in a hardwood and it's reverberating. I don't think there's any sound that can beat it. It's fun.
I can agree with that. I mean, it sounds absolutely unbelievable. How is it, usually the only people who I've talked to so far on the podcast that combine equine and canine hunting have been the lion hunters.
Out west on them, and it's predominantly a lot of time it's mules, isn't it? They do a lot of it on mules.
Yeah, it's a lot of time it's exactly. It's a lot
Which
of time
those things
mules.
I haven't seen that out west. I mean, those guys out there. I mean, we have some challenging places to get through on our horses, but compared to some of their, they take mules places that I would never even contemplate taking, even the more sure-footed of horses. I mean, those things jumping off 20-foot rocks and crazy stuff like that, and you think, holy moly, just crazy. Yep. Whereas ours are a little bit more tame.
Okay. What is it? I mean, what are you looking for? Just to, how is that sort of relationship? The synthesis of hounds and
horses. It's funny, you get a really, really good horse, and he's better than any GPS, really, because it's like you were saying in that video. Their little ears just give the game away. Like if you could be sitting in a wood and you probably can't hear him, but the damn horse can, because you'll see his ears just swing to the one way, and full well, a lot of the horses that end up doing my job, a lot of the times they end up. A lot of them are off the track thoroughbreds. I actually don't have any right now that are off the track thoroughbreds, but a lot of the times that's exactly what they are, and they're front runners, and they like to be up front. And when the hounds are running and the hounds are around them, they feel comfort they almost take the hounds as their herd almost. And it's funny how that you get that kind of connection. A really good one does anyway. And it feels, it's funny, at the end of a real long, hard run, and you sit down and, you're at an earth or whatever, or they caught it or whatever, and you're sitting down and the horse is sitting there with you, and the hounds are all around it, and the hounds are licking the horse, and the horse has got its head down, and the horse is enjoying the attention from the hounds as well. And it is a very symbiotic relationship. They all just seem to get along, Which I find what really cool. I find more crazy is how the lion hunters are able to do that with mules, because mules, I don't know what it is about mules. Mules just don't like dogs. They don't like predators, period. I'm sure we've all seen the videos of them thrown around, kicking and biting mountain lions and stuff. And there's a lot of people keep mules and donkeys as like for predator control and whatnot. I'd love to chat to some of those old mule skinner guys and just see how, whether it's just the certain strains that they have, that they're able to get their mules not to be aggressive with the hounds, because I think they have that innate want to kill hounds and dogs. So I'd love to chat
Right.
with one sometime, like a mule guy, and just say, is this just generations of breeding, or do you have to kind of do a lot of schooling with them to try and get them so that they accept the hounds?
Right. Wow, that's a good
Because
question. Yeah.
horses typically, more often than not, they do. The penny does finally drop with them. Some of them are a little bit aggressive, but for the most part, more often than not, especially when they're in and around the kennels, they just kind of tend to adopt the hounds as part of their herd almost. But I wondered what the mule guys. I wonder if they have a certain, it's that nurture over nature kind of thing. Whether it's just an inbred gene that, all the ones that were crappy at predator control ended up going as mountain lion mountain lion guys. I don't know.
Right. Yeah, it's a good question. I'm gonna talk to a couple of mule people I know and see if they can answer that question, because that is a good question. I'm interested to hear.
I think it would be certainly would be way more challenging to try and get a mule to be receptive to having hounds all the way around it and accepting of them around it than a horse. I think horses are maybe a little bit more dumber, dare I say. I think the mules are a little bit, well, in fact, I'd say they're a lot smarter, almost a little too smart, really.
Yeah, that is also what I've
the
heard.
Dealings.
Yeah.
I've had very few dealings with them, but back in the day, I used to know a judge who was a Korean. What was it? Yeah, I think he was a Korean war vet or something. And he went in there with mules, and I remember him telling me stories about how if a mule gets spooked, he'd always run to the high ground so he can see what's going on around him. Yep. But a bunch of stories, and I don't know if they were old wives' tales or not, but he had a huge amount of respect for mules and how smart they were.
Right. I think at least that's what I've heard as well from talking to some of these mule guys and gals, that, out in that real tough country, the nice thing with a mule is, a horse, anybody who's been around horses long enough knows that if a horse really truly panics, it'll kill itself. Yes. It'll kill everybody 100%. Around it. Whereas a mule apparently,
that and also the fact that you can bully a horse as well, whereas you can't bully a mule. You can bully a horse into doing some stupid crap that a mule would just be like, "No, you dumbass, we're all going to die if you try that," Whereas a horse would be like, "Oh, okay," splat, Mule not so much. Mule's like, "Yeah, no, you dumbass, that'll kill us all. Don't do that."
Right.
Kudos to that.
Exactly.
I don't know if I'd like the fox hunt for one. I know there's been several guys that have done it, like doing the style that we do. Yeah, really? That have hunted mules, and they jump, but they have the weirdest jump. They don't jump like a horse. They almost jump a bit more like a dog. They tend to like jump up alongside of stuff and get real close to it and then kind of jump over it. Whereas a horse tends to stand back a little bit and bascule over a fence. If you've ever seen them, they have like that mule jumping contest. I think it's in Kentucky or somewhere like that. It is, or Oklahoma, somewhere out Midwest.
Okay.
They have like, I'm gonna have to look you know how they do with the Malinois, how they have them running up the boards and they grab a hold of things. They actually have a thing, and it's like this thing, collapsible thing that they have, and they don't do it mounted. They have them unmounted, and the guys come up with a long rope and they teach the mules how to jump these big fences. I mean, I thought it was the darnest thing I'd ever seen. I was like, holy cow, that's crazy, that. But they jump really weird. They jump really weird. So I don't think somebody on board would be able to sit it very well. It's a very erratic kind of a movement. You give you whiplash almost. So yeah, I think they're good at what they do. Stay out west in those big rocks and canyons and stuff like that. Jumping fences in the East Coast is probably a little not in their repertoire.
Leave that to the horses.
For sure.
So, but your position, what is that like? What is your
official? My official position is a huntsman. A professional huntsman.
Okay. Can I ask you some questions here to it's going to expose me as a
No,
total,
go ahead. Go on.
Noob when it comes to this stuff, but I'm interested. Okay. As the huntsman, are you responsible for the entire hunt, including like horses, people, dogs, or is your main thing the kennels and the dogs?
Yes. So it's a tough. So the chain of command is we have a board of governors. The board of governors set up elections, and then our membership elects masters. Right now we have 3 masters. The masters oversee the running of, so they make sure that where we're going to hunt is the ground is cleared. So they make contact with all the landowners, make sure that, and they basically arrange the hunt fixture card. So where the different areas where we're going to hunt, they also, run the staff basically. So the masters, so once those masters have been enrolled and voted on, their job is to employ the staff, make sure they all get paid and whatnot, and then ensure that I'm doing my job basically. So my job entails looking after the kennels, looking after the hounds, maintenance of all the kennels, the veterinary side of the hounds. The same with the horses. We have I have a kennelman that does a lot of the like kind of dirty work, washing down and stuff like that. Not that I don't do it as well, but I mean that's primarily his job. And then I have a girl in the barn that looks after the horses, but I oversee the whole lot. So I oversee all the horses and as well as the hounds, and then also included in that I have to go. We have, I think it's something like 25,000 acres of trails that I have to. So I have to maintain all the trails in the various different counties in which we hunt. Maintain all of the trails, and then build all the jumps that we use for the horses, so we can get from place to place, and all the smaller 6-foot wicket gates that the people that follow us that can't or don't want to jump, they have the alternative of going through a gate, so they can still keep up, but they don't, if they can't jump or they're too old, or for young kids that don't want to jump, or are just not good enough riders, they can still come out, but they're just not, they can get through the gateways rather than having to jump the jumps. So that's part of my job as well. I have to go and make sure that all the jumps are all regularly maintained and cleaned, and make sure that all the brush is away from them all. Same with the gates. Build new ones if we have new areas that we're allowed to hunt in. Make sure that we can get in and around there on horses. So it means we got to put the coops in and stuff. So that's collectively, that's my whole job, and also liaise with landowners and farmers as well. I mean, for all I have the 3 masters that are bosses, they all have jobs of their own, right? This is just a volunteer thing that they do. So on a day-to-day basis, I have to go and sort out, any issues that might happen if there's a gate left open, or a fence is broken, or there's a tree come down across a certain trail. They'll call me and say, "Hey, Paul, I need you to fix this," or there's an issue here. So yeah, sure. I'm kind of everyone's whipping boy. I kind of run between, I mean, it's a 365 day a year job. Like, it's, everyone might think it's so, he just puts on a red coat and trots around tooting his horn. It's it's not that simple. No, I wish. Yeah. I wish if it was just that, it'd be pretty easy. Right. So yeah, dealing with the humans is the most challenging part of my job. I love working with the hounds and the horses and the animals, because more often than not you get a lot of reasoning from them. People, not so much.
Yeah, that's isn't that the truth? Do you struggle a little bit with do you have a lot of issues with like animal rights groups, protesters, things like that? Things that
we do not. I mean, I think we kind of somewhat fly under the radar. Being in Virginia, I think they've had a few tries at trying to get rid of fox pens and coyote pens. I think they've tried that a few times, and legislation also to try and get rid of our right to retrieve hounds, which has been
Yeah.
has been thwarted every time so far. But that's obviously
Thank God.
that's a constant battle, I'd say.
It's one of the best things about being a houndsman here in Norway
You have the same
is
right.
you have a right
Right.
to
Yes.
retrieve.
Yeah,
If somebody locks your dog into a garage and it's like, no, I'm not giving you your dog back, and they call the police are going to bust that person before they're
yeah.
going to
Well,
bust you,
that's nice.
which I love. I love that.
I wish they'd had that in England. To be honest, Bear, I think England made so many mistakes about the whole fox hunting thing. Um,
Yep.
I think we shied away very much from regulation and stuff like that. And I think if we'd done more of a North American style management program where you pay to play, and it sounds rough, but that's just how life goes. I mean, if every person who fox hunted in England had to pay a license fee of, I don't know, say £20. Can you imagine how much revenue
Yep.
that would have brought in? And it's amazing how much of an incentive it is to politicians that suddenly they've lost, £100 million from revenue from license fees. Suddenly it's like, all right,
Right.
well, maybe we won't get rid of it, And I think that was one of the mistakes I think we made. Along with other things as well. I think we were very proactive. We were very reactive instead of proactive with that type of people.
Sure.
And I think we kind of tried to, we were a bit ostrich-like. We kind of stuck our heads in the sand, and before they knew it, they just had the anti-hunters had the bit between the teeth, and we were screwed, And I think even to this day, I mean, I can see it within the next 5 years being the same as Norway. You just won't be able to run a pack of hounds, period. It's going to be singular hounds,
Yep.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And it's sad. It is sad that, I mean, like we just discussed, I mean, whatever's chasing it doesn't care whether there's 20 dogs or one dog. All it knows is it's being chased.
Right.
It's unfortunately we live in an urban society that don't understand rural ways, and it's getting harder and harder. I mean, even here in America, where you'd think they'd never ban hunting of any description, it's slowly. I mean, especially you look out on that West Coast, how through stealth they've managed to, ban bear hunting and ban, cat hunting and whatnot, And it's stealth. It's that state by state, just picking away at the thin end of the wedge.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. It's the sort of thing that, the pacifists, the middle of the roaders, and I'll include myself in that. I'm a little bit like the, surely we can come to an agreement here. But it's people like me that, kind of want to come to an agreement that, ends up putting us in a rough position where, suddenly we've given away in small increments, death by 1,000 cuts.
Yeah.
Giving away our livelihood. And it's, you don't see it coming until it's too late. And that's the unfortunate
I mean,
thing.
I'd love to go out west and experience the West Coast, but I mean, West Coast is as bad as England. Basically, everything I love is either immoral or illegal. I mean, it's like, well, crap.
Right.
I mean, I have no desire to want to go back home. I mean, I love my home country, but I can't see myself moving from America. I mean, I just love it here. Everything I love, I can do here at the moment. And that's the worrying thing. I mean, that is a definite concern. Even, I have a son, he's 20-year-old, and I even wonder whether he'll, in his lifetime, whether it'll be banned. I think.
Right. Yeah. I mean, and that's the scary thing, isn't it?
It is. And, we're living in this more of a virtual world every day. I mean, everything's, phones and digital and stuff like that. And I think anything that gets kids away from that kind of side of things and into actual reality and and realizing where their meat comes from, and where just living outdoors. I mean, the amount of people that friends of ours around here that they're near as damn it self-sufficient. We have some wonderful friends. They're members of the hunt club. Well, the lady doesn't ride anymore. She had a nasty fall a few years ago, and they're getting up there in age. They're no spring chickens. But they have setters. They're big shooting guys.
Mm-hmm.
They love dove hunting. They love upland bird hunting and whatnot. And she has a garden
Mm-hmm.
there, and she literally, I mean, the woman is just amazing. I mean, she has a bunch of, do you know what I mean by pawpaw trees?
Yeah,
They have a bunch of
absolutely.
pawpaw trees. She
Mm-hmm.
makes her own pawpaw ice cream, and it's just stuff like that.
Really cool.
They're just that kind of stuff. It just, I can see it's all stuff that's going to be lost, because I think just
Yeah.
like you said, death by a thousand cuts. Everything, it's just overreach by the government, and I think probably a well-meaning general public, but they're ignorant. They don't know.
That's the thing, and it's the danger, and I will avoid jumping up onto this high horse yet again, but it is the danger of social media, is that everybody's opinion is suddenly equal, even though opinions were not created equal.
Yeah, for sure.
See, I have to be somebody, my feet are on the ground. I'm out there 4-5 days a week actively hunting my hounds. That's just hunting. That's not including the time that I use in care and training and all of this different stuff. But my opinions on social media are going to be less than somebody living in, one of the bigger cities who grew up watching The Fox and the Hound, or, and have an issue with what I do.
Yes.
Which I can understand why they think the way that they do, because that's where I came from. I came from the Fox and the Hound, the Bambi, the Bambi generation, who, and was to a large degree raised anti-hunting. So I understand where they're coming from. Right. And they're not coming from, they're not looking at houndsmen and being like, I hate you and I'm going to ruin everything that you love. It's more of I think I'm doing the right thing and you're collateral damage. And that's going to kill us. I mean, and it's really why we all need to stand together. I believe, and I just wrote an article about this for Bear Hunting Magazine, where, we have an image problem. We're the low-hanging fruit. Right. The hound hunters are the low-hanging fruit. And, if we can't get out of our 100%. Own ways and stop bickering about, game, breeds, podcast preferences, seriously, I've had people send me like gnarly messages saying, I will never talk to you again because I prefer this other podcast. Which is that's great. I don't mind, don't send me stupid messages like that. But at the same time, it's like, the more voices we have that are promoting what we do in a good way, the stronger we're going to be. If there are 300 hound podcasts out there, awesome. I would much prefer that than having one niche podcast with 100,000 listeners. And it's a little bit scary to me.
Absolutely. Well, it is. I mean, we live in a world right now where, they're doing this lab made meat, and like you've got more people that are vegans than there ever has been. Like, so I mean, the fact that people are distasteful of the fact that people even eat meat now, the fact that we're actually hunting what we eat is a different level. I mean, for me, I personally, I wish I could be more less dependent on anything. I wish I could just live off the grid and stay away from all of that, because what we eat as hunters is about as good for your body as you can get. You know, it hasn't been pumped with all the crap that a lot of the meat is nowadays. You know, it's just good, clean, organic, or as organic as you can get. You know, meat on the table. I mean, like even chicken nowadays. I mean, they say that that's all washed in bleach, so that, you know, because of where it's at and stuff like that. And you want, you know, you do wonder whether that's true or whether it isn't true. I mean, I have no
Right.
idea,
I
but I
mean,
mean,
well, here
that's what we get
they've
told.
got this great thing
You
here
know,
where it's truth in advertising. You can't call something that it's not, and they've got to give a
right?
composition
Yeah,
of what is in every bit of food. And like chicken breast here is by weight, 15 to 20% salt water. Yeah, which is just like,
yeah. It's all brine.
it's disgusting.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, that was actually the motivation for me becoming a hunter in the first place, was a desire for better ingredients, because I really, really enjoyed it. I really, really enjoy cooking. And it was a desire to
Me
get
too.
the ingredients that I,
Yeah, no.
the one of the best meals I ever had was a guy who, in hindsight, probably poached the deer. But I didn't know that. I didn't know that at that point.
Yeah, right.
But it was one of the best meals I've ever had. And it was just a basic, simple meal of, venison, potatoes, but he knew how to prepare it, and he did a good job. Right.
Well, and good ingredients as well, right? Good ingredients is good ingredients. Like, so, I mean, it's good food. Good food is good food. Good.
Yeah.
It doesn't need all the fancy and pomp and ceremony, like, you know. I mean, that's one thing I did learn in Italy, like, you know, the Italian food. Even in North America, I find that they put cream and crap in it that it doesn't need. I mean, it just doesn't. I mean,
Absolutely.
good ingredients. That's all it needs is good ingredients.
Absolutely.
And with wild game, that's
tell
what
by
you
my
get.
last name that my whole family came from Italy, and we all make food, and yeah, it's the
right.
It's good filling food without the pomp.
Yes.
And yeah, sort of.
They call it in Italy cucina povera.
Poverty food.
Poverty food, basically, is what it is, and that's, it's a lot of the time. Even when we lived there, we'd get the old girls would be coming in looking for the wild asparagus. They'd go and harvest the wild asparagus, and you'd see them after the they call it Italian rughetta, is what do they call it? Arugula. You'd see them out in the hedgerows, and they'd come in the fields, and the old girls would have their little baskets, and that's not that long ago, Even now, they still, they appreciate it.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
You don't have to go and spend a ton of money. But then you look in the supermarket now, and you go to the freezer section, and there's 15 sections of frozen hungry man crap, like hungry man meal, and it's like, yeah,
I don't think it is.
That can't
I don't
be
think
good
it's good for the people eating it. I don't think it's good for the animal. So,
no.
You mentioned that you have, that you still raise terriers, amongst other things.
Yeah. I still have. My kennel name is Huntaway Kennels.
Okay.
So I keep border terriers. I still have the odd lurcher around, and I have a couple of whippets left. I found it hard to find the right type of whippets for my liking here in North America. Coming from the northeast of England, where whippets were traditionally raised and bred, and that's where they started off at. They were a lot smaller, and I think they've kind of morphed in North America. They've not morphed into something that I don't think they originally were. They were somewhat of a poacher's dog you could throw under your jacket and go and poach a rabbit, catch a rabbit. Back from the day when the landed gentry wouldn't let all the little serfs run around and eat any game, kind of thing. So I mean I like the whippets, but I think the ones that we find here in North America are just too big. I mean, I like my whippets under 25
are they
pounds
that
and
big there?
Preferably under 20 pounds.
Really?
Oh, some huge ones. I remember when I was showing up in Canada, there was a very well known whippet male that was winning an awful lot, and he was in a best in show lineup, and he was bigger than the female
really?
Alaskan Malamute stood next to him.
That's terrible. Here they're tiny.
Yeah.
They're
so. Yeah. I think of like Italian Greyhounds were kind of the size of the whippets I remember as a kid. The Italian Greyhounds, and now they've just everything seems to have stepped up the size.
Wow, because we've got whippets at work. I'm a veterinary nurse, and I think the biggest one we've got is, gosh, his name is Henry, and I'm betting he's 13 kilos, maybe, and he's by far the biggest one we've got.
Yeah,
that's interesting. Yeah, that's interesting.
Right. Yeah.
Wow.
So that's under 30 pounds. Under 13 pounds. Yeah. No, and it's the same. It's the same with the terriers, right? I mean, the terriers. I mean, I still hunt them. I don't hunt them as much as I'd really like to. Just because I'm so busy nowadays. When we lived up in Canada, when the snow came in, it was difficult. We couldn't hunt really on horseback, so I used to hunt the terriers a lot more then. And it was primarily in barns and stuff because the ground was so damn frozen. And I was on my own. I know in Scandinavia, in Norway and Finland and stuff, they'll dig them out. But normally there's 4 or 5 guys. And, when you've got 4 or 5 guys on digging bars and whatnot, once you get through the permafrost, it's not too bad. But I was primarily hunting solo. And, I just didn't think I could, you get some of these fox earths that are, some of them can be 15, 20 feet down, and you're on your own, that's a long ways to dig down to try and get back down to it. So I primarily hunted a lot of barns, and primarily for raccoons more than foxes, which are a formidable opponent for any terrier, So, yeah, we hunted them a lot up in Canada, not so much now. I still get out with them a bit, but nowhere near as much as I'd like to. And I show them as well. I mean, life's too short to look at an ugly dog, There's no reason why you should have an ugly dog, but I find a lot of the show world, I think both hunting and showing people can garner a lot of information from one another. I think we kind of, especially like terrier breeds and also like gun dog breeds and that kind of stuff. If they work together, I think collectively we'd have better dogs. But I think we've kind of drawn a line in the sand. I think the show people couldn't care less about working qualities, and I think you'd be amazed how many working guys really don't care about conformation either.
That's a discussion that's raging right now in here in Scandinavia. All right, I won't speak about the rest of Scandinavia. Here in Norway,
right?
Because the judging is so. I'm going to stick my neck out here, and people are not going to like it, but it's so poor that people can pick and choose who is judging their dogs based on their relationship to that person. That the one of the beagles,
absolutely,
one of the siblings, I think it was, to mine, was at a show and won best in race, or best in breed, and then best was runner up for best in show. Did very well, and the guy sent me the breakdown of what they had looked at, and it said a very well shaped head, ears that were properly placed, erect tail, properly positioned, properly placed, well formed legs, good proportions, et cetera, et cetera. That same dog went to another show the next week, did not place at all, and was slaughtered on all of the same points. Weak head, poorly placed ears, tail was not erect enough. The legs were stocky and too straight. And point for point, they went over the same things with completely different attitudes about it. And when it's that arbitrary, I can understand, like, for a guy like me who used to do some of the obedience stuff, and it's just like it just makes my eyes cross after a little while. I'm just like, this is just getting a little too dumb.
Well, I think, I mean, it's a tough one because, I mean, as you well know, like, everything has a breed standard. But even within that breed standard, there is so much subjectivity to it, right? What's important to one judge about a certain characteristic isn't necessarily, important to another. I mean, with my breed, Border Terriers, there's so many big ones that are virtually unspannable. And I mean by spannable is you're supposed to be able to get, you put your hands around its chest, and you're supposed to be able to touch the bottom of your hands under the rib cage, and then above his shoulders, your thumbs should touch, right? They should be easy. You should be able to do that with an average working man's hand. Now, so there's a bit of leeway there. If you get a little small lady, obviously, if it's a bigger dog, then likelihood is she's probably not going to be able to span it. But to me, that is the most paramount thing of anything in a working terrier, because if it's not spannable, it cannot get to where it needs to get to. So everything else is a completely moot point. But the amount of big dogs I see that are I mean, being tall is one thing. I mean, you see some tall terriers, legs fold up. I mean, that's not a big. I've seen 17-inch and 18-inch dogs get to ground because they have real narrow, shallow chests. So they're able to get where they need to get to. So legs just fold. That's not the issue. It's the spannability of them. That chest has to be spannable, and the rib cage needs to be compressible, and they need to be able to get where they need to get to. And any other point other than that, when you're judging a dog, is completely moot. It doesn't matter if it has beautifully set ears or it has a wonderful otter head, as in Border Terriers, they're supposed to have a head like that of an otter, which is beautiful. Yeah, it's a beautiful thing. Right. But if the body's a load of crap,
if it's the size of a Springer Spaniel,
is neither here nor
doesn't
there.
matter. Right? Yeah.
Yeah. What use is that? And just because 99.9% of Border Terriers never see an earth, that doesn't mean to say that we should. I mean, the first line of our breed standard says essentially a working terrier. That is the first line, essentially a working terrier. So I mean, how more prominent can that side of its history be?
Right.
Irrespective of whether it's being worked or not.
Right. I mean, but that's the truth with pretty much every breed. It's one of the reasons why I have been, and in my time as a dog musher, was vehemently opposed, and I still am vehemently opposed to making the Alaskan Husky an actual breed. I mean, as a breed with a breed standard. Because then you take away, you start to consider other things than
the working ability,
performance, what you're looking for. And I mean, back to that pup that I've got now, that was one of the things that appealed to me, is it's a mixed breed. I don't need to, there's no breed standard apart from the one that he set in his own mind. And his bottom line is health,
Yeah.
performance, and longevity, which are all important things to me.
Yeah.
But do your terriers, do you ever combine those two worlds, the terriers and the foxhounds? Like, do you ever have foxes go to ground that you'll then,
So we used to do it a lot. It's kind of somewhat frowned upon nowadays. To be honest, here I could probably get away with it in the early season a little bit.
okay.
But to be honest, Bear, we just don't have enough foxes. We really don't have enough foxes. I mean, that's the whole crux of it. I mean, we have sufficient, but not enough that we could risk. I mean, my terriers, the border terriers, typically are pretty hard. They're not what I would describe as a Bolton breed. You know, like your Jack Russells tend to go down and they'll bay, and in an opportunity they'll kind of get in behind it and bolt a fox. Border terriers just tend to go down there and grab him by the throat and kill him. So they're more of a kill. You know, so I mean, yeah, I mean, I have varying degrees. I mean, my old girl T, what's she now? 13, 14. And she was really, really smart when I was working her on a lot of coons. She realized that if she got in there, that the coons could grab a hold of her and rake her face with the claws. And it didn't take her very long to realize that she would just sit and bay and bay and bay until I could get to her. But what she did work out is that if she could get over the top of the coon and grab the coon behind the back of the head, that the coons couldn't rake on her with her claws if she could do that. And quite often they'd break through to her and she'd have a hold of them by the back of the head, and the coon wasn't able to get its hands back in there, its claws back in there to rake on her face. So she kind of adapted and overcome and realized that that's how she would work it, you know. So it's you know, different dogs, it's like anything else. Some of them have bigger pain tolerances than others. Some border terriers will just slam straight in there and they'll get bitten on the face and they just don't care, and they'll just they'll kill the fox or the coon, right?
Right. No, that I mean,
it just depends. I do like the brown. I do, what we call them, little brown dogs. I do like the brown dogs just more than any other breed, terrier breed, particularly because they're so easy to live with. They're very, very easy to live with. I mean, I have 6 or 8 of them right now, and they all get along for the most part. I got a couple of bitches that kind of take a bit of sufferance to each other. They've had a few little tiffs and stuff like that, but for the most part, like, I mean, I used to have Jack Russells when I was a kid and bred Jack Russells for a long time. And if you put 8 Jack Russells in there together, like, I mean, there's blood and snot's going all around.
Yeah.
Like,
you're going to put in 8.
The little shits and want to kill each other,
yeah.
you know?
No, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, you know. So whereas the brown dogs, for the most part, I call them the stoner's dog, you know. I mean, they're pretty chill. And a lot of the times they do make very good pets just purely because they're one of those type of breeds that if you never flip that switch on them, they're oblivious to it and they're quite happy just doing their thing, living in the house and going down to the park and feeding the ducks bread. But if that same dog, if you flip the switch on them, would get into it with a badger in a heartbeat, like, you know. So that's the thing I do like about them. A lot of terrier men don't like them because they take a long time to mature and get, like, not physically but mentally in a position to do it. For work wise, a lot of the guys like those Jag Terriers and Patterdale Terriers because at 7, 8 months old they want to tear everything limb from limb. And I just think the Border Terrier is just a bit more of a thinking man's dog. You know, they take their time. But I think they're worth waiting for because when the penny does drop and they finally do get it, they're a much better dog for it.
That's interesting.
But I like them as a breed. They're easy to live with. They're so much easier to live with than a lot of other terrier breeds. There's not many, you know, terrier breeds you could have 8 or 10 of them scurrying around and they're not wanting to kick the living crap out of each other every 2 minutes. You know.
No, we've got a lot of these like Jagd terriers over here, the German. Yeah. Oh my God.
Oh yeah, the
They're
yeah, no, they're freaking nuts.
oh yeah. I mean, they're psychopaths
They're psychotic.
that look cute. Yeah, they're. I mean, they're.
Yeah, they do. They do look, especially get the more rough coated ones than they do. But I mean, you see the videos on YouTube of them, and the thing with those Jag Terriers is there's two very distinct types of those as well. They've got the guys that are using them for earthwork,
Yep.
and then the guys that are using them on pigs. And the guys that are using them on pigs, they're considerably bigger. Obviously, they're like 17, 18 inches. Some big terriers, but they're absolutely fearless, and you see them just getting flung all over the place by these wild boar, and they just get back up, and you know,
I mean, it's crazy, and
they just don't seem to care.
At least over here, they bred the den dogs to be just as insane. You know, they'll go in there and they'll throw down with whatever is in there. You know, so what kills a lot of them is that they'll go into, a lot of times we have a lot of badger here. And the fox will not infrequently run through, run through a den that at the moment is being occupied by a badger. And the terriers will go down there and they'll just battle the first thing they stumble upon, which is, you know, usually the badger who's on its way out to figure out what the hell is going on. And I mean, a lot of those yogged terriers are being killed by badgers, or killing badgers and then dying of their wounds later is more the actual.
Yeah. Well, and people don't realize how ferocious. I think someone described. So the difference between a North American badger and an English badger is an English badger looks like he wants to take you out and have crumpets and a cup of tea, whereas the American badger wants to take you out the back alley and shiv you in the back of the side. You know, it's like, but little do they know that what looks to be cute and fluffy thing has an unbelievably powerful jaw. Like, I mean, those things just they might look pretty, but my God, they are probably the most formidable opponent for any earth dog.
Pound for pound,
bar none.
I would put. I mean, the European badger. You know, and I agree. I mean, they look nice compared to the American badgers look like, you know, the English badgers' meth addicted cousins. Like they're just insane. Yeah, but
that's a good description. Yep.
Right.
And always look like they're pissed. They always look,
they do.
Whenever you see the videos of them,
whereas the European
angry.
badgers just look like, they just look kind of nice, you know, look fluffy.
Well, if you ever saw the Pooks and then the kiddies programs, The Wind in the Willows and Mr. Badger there, like it's like, oh,
no, not so
lovely
much.
Mr. Badger.
But
Not so much. Not so much.
I'm interested in the terrier stuff too. I've got I'm headed north within the next month or so. I'm headed north and I'm going to pick up. There was a litter of den dogs done here, I guess, a year and a half ago, that turned out really, really nice. But the female had 8 pups.
Right.
4 of them died, and she needed to be operated on and was unfortunately sterilized at the same time. But the 4 surviving puppies have turned out just absolute dynamite.
Dynamite.
So I found that dog's sister.
Yeah.
Or sister.
How were they bred?
She was a Jack Border cross. And
that's a good cross.
She was bred. The pups were Jack Border and then purebred Patterdale.
Right.
Yeah,
they'd
really
have been
nice. So I know
else.
of this dog's, I think it's half sister. And I'm going to go up and breed, and I'm going to get her, and I'm going to breed her to the same male that her sister was bred to. And get quarter border, quarter Jack Patterdale. Yeah,
quarter Jack,
like small,
and the rest rest
small,
pad, yeah.
gritty,
Right.
Yeah. Den earth dog patterdales.
Nice. Yeah. Yeah. Nice job. Yeah, I mean, the one thing that impresses me about Scandinavia is they still have a lot of CKC breeds that have fallen out of favor as earth dogs everywhere else in the world. Yet they still use them. You see an awful lot of wire-haired and smooth-haired fox terriers still up there, Welsh terriers. Yeah, a lot of them, and I love that. I think that's fantastic still to see. Like, I mean, that's what they were bred for. And even now, when I go to, if I don't go very often, but when we go to the AKC shows here, I love to see a really nice, sharp-looking little female wire fox terrier, and you think, that one still could do the job.
Yeah,
could still do the job, and they have enough piss and vinegar that they could. Fox terriers. I've yet to see one that's not
born with
angry
a chip
at the
on
world.
Its shoulder. Yeah.
Yeah, they are like they've definitely got little man syndrome.
Yeah.
Some of those fox terriers, the wire foxes, they're a little fired up. But yeah, no, it's nice to see. I follow quite a few guys on Facebook, the Finnish guys and Norwegian guys that are still running the registered Welshies and fox terriers and stuff, and they're doing the job.
The fox terriers
it's
are
great
probably
to see.
the most
really
popular den dog over here, because they do, they'll do a little bit like what you talked about, get behind and chase them out rather than just going down and going to war.
Yes, yeah. No, I mean you can have hard dogs that are what I call sensible hard dogs that will go in there. They'll assess what's in front of them, and they'll kind of almost like a boxer. They'll just test them out, and then they'll just, when the opportunity arises, they'll sit there and bay there and bay and bay and bay. And when the opportunity arises, they'll slide in and then they'll grab them by the throat, and that's it, game over. And there are other crazy dogs. I hate to be the one that's bagging on them a bit, but the likes of the Jag Terriers and some of the harder Patterdales, they don't want to kill it. They just want to sit there.
They're disappointed when it dies. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, shit, I was having fun there. No, you either sit there and you bay at it and keep it in one spot, or you sit there and a sensible hard dog will just sit there until the opportunity arises, and then grab a hold of the fox or badger, or whatever the case may be.
No problems. No problems. Well, we've had you here for about 2 hours, Paul, and I'm you're a busy guy, so
holy hell. Yeah, I'm gonna get in trouble now.
But I've had a blast talking to you. I really I appreciate you coming on. I'm glad we were able to make this work. And,
no, it's been fun.
It's been really interesting hearing about your history personally, and also hearing about some of the experiences you've had that are, really kind of, even though you're in the United States, are still fairly foreign to a lot of the houndsmen, I think, that listen to this podcast. Who, are most of them are, I think most of the people who listen to the podcast are the, coon hunters, bear hunters, folks who don't really.
Well, and then that's the thing. I always feel that when we come across, and I know lots of guys that have deer hounds and whatnot, and they know that I love everything the same as what they do. But I think a lot, unfortunately, a lot of the coon guys and the bear guys, they kind of look at us and think, well, they're a bunch of toughs and they're a bunch of assholes, and they don't. But they couldn't be more wrong. I think there is an element of people that are a bit like that do the sport that I work in. But I think the vast majority of those people all love the same things that they do. And I wish that collectively we'd all get along a lot better and kind of unite a lot more, because we all do. We all love the same things. We all love hounds. We all love the countryside. We all want it to remain that way. And I think people get caught up in stereotypes, especially, I mean, right, this time of year it's not so much because we're all wearing, rough and ready clothes. We're not wearing our fancy red coats and all of that nonsense. But that's all
Right.
it is fancy coats and nonsense. I mean, it's just part of the tradition. It doesn't change who we are and what we're doing.
Right. It's people that appreciate the same things and have much more in common with each other than
not.
Yes,
absolutely.
So yeah, no, I love that attitude, and I've really enjoyed talking to you, Paul. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, well, hopefully we can keep in contact. And I don't know, do you get across back to the States very often or not?
If you had asked me that the last time I was in the States, I would have said, yeah, I get back there every 6 months, but that was 5 years ago.
Oh, right, right.
Between COVID and some other stuff.
And you got little ones and stuff. I mean, that's always,
Yeah, I don't make it back nearly as much as I would like to, but I'm looking to try and get back there between now and Christmas time. Is my goal. I don't know exactly when that's going to happen, but that is my.
Where you're originally was Maryland? Did you say you're originally from?
No, originally from Maine.
Maine. I knew it was one of the M's. I couldn't remember. Right.
Yep.
Well, that might be that if you're probably going home to see family and whatnot. Virginia might be a bit of a stretch, but you're always welcome.
Might be a little bit of a haul.
Yeah.
But I would love to come down there at some point. I'm planning. I've got this sort of harebrained scheme in my head that I would like to take a. I lived in the States for 21 years and did a little bit of road tripping, but not much.
Not nearly enough.
Yeah. And there's part of me that I'm kind of have this harebrained scheme that once the kids are a little bit older and maybe gone off to college or whatever, that I'll just, which is not that long away.
Yeah.
That I'll fly over, hop in a car and take a hound tour of the United States.
We did that a bit in the spring. We went hog hunting down in Texas, and we went through Tennessee and
cool.
Arkansas and all of those, and Mississippi and Louisiana and all the places that I'd never been to. And I tell you, we had it was my son, a friend of mine, and his son, and we had an absolute blast. It was just so much fun, and it wasn't necessarily that the hunting was great. But we just had just an absolute blast getting there. I mean, it just, it sounds a bit corny, but it's like that old school, just American road trip. It literally was that. I mean, we just had so many laughs and so much fun. So, yeah,
I mean,
do it.
Stereotypes are stereotypes for a reason, man.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it was
absolutely.
So much fun. So much fun.
That's cool.
Well, if anyone wants to look me up, I'm on TikTok under Hounds Are Us. On TikTok, I've got a bunch of videos on there. Or if you look me up on Instagram, it's Huntaway Kennels.
Okay.
No, actually, I tell a lie. Sorry, my Huntaway Kennels got hacked. Got hacked and taken off. So it's just Paul Wilson 1975, or on Facebook, it's just me, Paul Wilson. But if anyone wants to look me up or reach out to me and wants any more information or shoot the breeze?
I hope people do that because, Paul, you've been a fantastic guest, and I appreciate you coming on and appreciate you taking the time because I know you're a very busy guy.
Yeah, well, it's that time of year. I think everyone's getting ready now. I think and hunting season's coming up, the deer season's coming up. Everyone's everyone's buzzing.
Yep, absolutely. Well, if you ever find yourself on this side of the pond and want to experience Norway looking at hounds' asses.
Yeah, I'd love to be honest. Like I say, I about 10 years ago, a Finnish lady called Maria Stahlberg, she came over and got, when we lived in Canada, she came and took 2 of my Border Terrier pups out to Finland. And she's done remarkably well. She works them in the winter. She does all the den trials. She's shown them all the way through. They're multiple champions through Estonia and God knows what else, Finnish, Swedish. She's made them all champions. and she keeps saying
fantastic.
you should come over, you should come over. So maybe instead of going back home to old Blighty, maybe I'll go to Scandinavia, go hook up with Mario, and then come see you guys and just chill out with you guys.
Oh, you got to do it. Let me know when you do.
All right, man. All right, well.
All right, man. I really appreciate it. Bye-bye.
Man, I love that sound.